Hello guys, this is going to be a video review of the Bowers & Wilkins P7 over-the-air portable headphones. Now Bowers & Wilkins is a very well-regarded and respected company for their home speakers. They're very well known for the innovations and the performance output that these speakers provide. So Bowers & Wilkins sought out to make portable headphones for the masses and consumers and attempt to bring over some of that technology in these headphones. So the first headphone that Bowers & Wilkins incorporated was the P5, which is an on-the-air portable headphone. The second headphone that they created was the P3, which is a much more smaller but still on-the-air headphone. Now the P7 here is essentially Bowers & Wilkins' first over-the-air headphone and is a headphone more targeted to the consumer who wants essentially the best in terms of portable hi-fi listening. As you can see by this design, it's a very luxurious and nicely presented headphone, pretty much constructed of some of the finest materials that you can find in a headphone today. There's no plastic to be found on the P7 and pretty much all of the P series in Bowers & Wilkins' headphone lineup. This is constructed of pure lambskin leather and aluminum, and that's it. It's pretty much a very exquisite, very beautifully crafted piece of engineering right here. As well as when I first open these, you really get that smell of pure leather, and it still lingers around the headphones, so you can still kind of get that smell when you're listening to them, even outside or in the house. And the smell is not offensive in any way. I actually like the smell. It's just a smell of quality, a smell of sophistication, a smell of class. So it really is a very, well constructed piece of engineering. Now moving over to the comfortability of the P7, I find these a pretty comfortable pair of headphones. Not necessarily the most comfortable that I've used, but it's fairly comfortable. The ear pads, even though they're rectangular in shape, they have a diameter large enough to fit in my entire ear, so my ears don't necessarily feel cramped when they go inside. Also, the material and the density of the pads is pretty nice, but the pads is rather dense. As you can see, when I put pressure on it with my finger, it essentially retracts rather quickly. So there's not memory foam inside of this. So as a result, when you put them on, the pads are essentially trying to regain their shape, but it really doesn't really cause discomfort for me. But it does create a rather intense seal in the sense that these block out probably the most amount of noise out of all the portable headphones that I've had the pleasure of using. And these don't necessarily approach the noise isolation of, say, a well-sealed in-ear monitor, but these isolate pretty well. You may at first glance think that the P7 does not have a detachable wire, but to get to it, you essentially just remove the magnetically attached ear pad like so, and it magnetically attaches with these two magnetic prongs, and the wire and the speaker itself is now exposed. So you essentially just pull up on the wire and then you just pull it out, and then you're good to go. Just swap the wires. The P7 comes with two wires, one with a standard Apple certified microphone, whereas with Android you only can be able to utilize the play and pause button to pause and play music, as well as to hang up and pick up on phone calls. Now moving over to the sound quality of the Bowers & Wilkins P7, these are simply magnificent. It's a very open, clear, articulated, very dynamic and lively presentation. Now, like always, let me dive more into detail on exactly what I've just said. Now diving into essentially the bass frequencies. The bass on these is very present, very full, and very extended. Also, on top of that, it's a very textured and a very articulated bass response. It's a very tight and punchy, very lively sounding bass that also has a sense of depth and airiness to the presentation. I absolutely love the way the bass on these sound. It sounds very engaging and very enveloping and very atmospheric. Bass notes are clearly indistinguishable, and when music gets very complex, it doesn't sound muddled and mushed on top of each other. Now moving over to the mid-range presentation, these possess a rather neutral sound in mid-range with no real character to it. And what I mean by that, it essentially doesn't have any kind of emphasis or any coloration that I can personally pick up on. I personally still enjoy this kind of a mid-range, but I like a more forward inviting one. But the way this incorporates into the overall sound, I can see why Bowers and Wilkins chose this kind of a mid-range presentation. Now moving over to the technicalities of this mid-range presentation, it's a very vivid and very crystal clear and open and distinct presentation of the mid-range. I particularly love the way guitars sound on this. You can really hear the reverberation of each string, and it sounds very distinct and defined. There's a very insane level of sense of speed with these headphones. So vocals, they eradicate and they sound so vivid and full of, full of life because of the ability for this headphone to pretty much render all of the subtle cues and the reverbs and the sense of presence from the vocals. So all the instruments that lie in the mid-range sound very, very realistic. Now moving over to the treble, I'd have to say that this treble response is essentially the best treble that I've ever heard in all of the headphones, even the IEMs that I've personally had, and that is to include the Westone ES5, the JH13 Pro, and my beautiful Fidelio X1s by Philips. The treble response on the P7s is absolutely amazing. It's so distinct, it's so defined, and it extends, and it's a very smooth, very nicely tonally sculptured treble that has the technical ability of just amazement. It's just, I sit back and sometimes just smile at how this headphone resolves the treble frequencies. It's a very beautifully crafted frequency that comes out of this headphone. I wouldn't even call it treble, I would just call it the P7's frequency, because the way it renders that frequency is just a trademark of this headphone. I've never heard this level of detail and this level of definition and pristine clarity and attack in the upper registers that this headphone has to offer. And as a result of this beautifully crafted treble response that the P7 has to offer, it really gives a sense of instrument separation and a sense of openness and articulation in the sound that I've really only heard in very few headphones. And I would probably say the closest one is the NAD or NAD HP50 VSO, which also offered a very distinct, open and articulated sound for a closed back headphone. The P7 is either better than the HP50 or just about on par. And there are just times when I swear the clarity and the openness of the sound is probably meeting my Fidelio X1s, and those are just by far the best headphones that I've heard in terms of a complete package. Not in terms of technicalities, but just essentially in terms of its frequency response, the sound signature, as well as the technicalities that it has to offer. That complete mirage of aspects is why I love the X1 so much. These, on the other hand, they offer an enjoyable sound signature as well as technicalities that are amongst the best that I've heard from a portable headphone. The treble response from these are just the best that I've heard, period. It's just magnificently defined and distinct. So as of right now, these are just my go-to portable headphones. They have a beautiful, luxurious aesthetic to them, as you can see here, as well as being fairly comfortable. They're built like complete luxurious tanks, and the sound is just exquisite. It's just a magnificent, distinct sound. At the price of $399, I will highly recommend them. I personally will recommend them, even though the price is way out of most people's budgets. So if this video has anything that may not have been covered, feel free to post them below in the comments. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching this video review, guys. Later.